About 6 or 7 years ago, I read for the first time Jane Austen, Her Homes and Her Friends, which is written by Constance Hill. It's illustrated by her sister Ellen G. Hill. And the reason this came to my attention is actually because I lived very close to where they used to live, in Hampstead, and visited their graves. And I thought, well, I need to read what you've written now. Partly also because I'm a fan of Jane Austen. And this is everything that every fangirl or fanboy for Jane Austen will absolutely love. And I decided recently to revisit it because it had been quite a while and I remembered really enjoying it. And reading it a second time, I thought it's still wonderful. It's definitely something that I think a lot of people will love. As the title of the book suggests, it looks at places where Jane Austen lived, where she visited and spent a lot of time, and also a lot of the people she met along the way and spent some significant time with. And that's very interesting. There are a lot of books about this, but what makes this brilliant is that it's written by fans. Constance Hill is a fan of Jane Austen, and she and her sister go to these places, Steventon, Bath, of course, Chawton, various other places where Jane Austen's visited, and she basically explains what it was like to visit those places in very beautifully descriptive detail, what that place meant to Jane Austen, how that was perhaps incorporated into her work where applicable, basically showing us Jane Austen's world through a very knowledgeable fan's eyes. And I love that because while I love academic texts, I think they obviously offer great value and great insight. Sometimes it's nice to just read the words of somebody who shares that passion with you as the reader. While I love Jane Austen, I studied her at university, I love kind of critically analysing her work. Sometimes I just like to let go of that analysis and just enjoy Jane Austen's world for what it is, and to share this kind of fandom, if you like, in this book. And it's so beautiful, and if you're a fan of Jane Austen, I promise you will absolutely love it. Hopefully, it will encourage you to visit some of these locations if you can. It is very descriptive. There are certainly times when I feel like I'm there, I can envision it. We have some beautiful illustrations accompanying some of the descriptions. It is very knowledgeable. So even though I'm saying it's not a critical academic analysis, there is a lot of knowledge there. Constance Hill definitely knows what she's talking about. She's definitely somebody who's not just read the books once. She definitely knows Jane Austen well enough to be able to give this beautiful, eye opening account of her experiences of visiting these various places associated with Jane Austen. It's a lot of fun. It's very different. It's very different to pretty much any other book about Jane Austen that I've read. That's not to say that there aren't other people who have visited these places and written about them, but also because it's from the turn of the century, published in 1901, I believe, the first edition. And having somebody who was much closer to Jane Austen's time than what we are now is still quite a far away, of course, but it's perhaps a different perspective because a lot of the analyses into Austen's work hadn't been done yet. Certainly, with what we've got with more contemporary analyses and documentaries and things that give us these deeper looks into Austen's life, this is a very different perspective. And I absolutely love it. So I wanted, after rereading it, to share it with you and say if you're a fan of Jane Austen, please read it. I am now, as I was 6 or 7 years ago, a fan of Constance Hill. If you're ever in Hampstead, do go to the new churchyard or the new graveyard at St John at Hampstead. Uh, and buried quite heavily beneath a lot of foliage, somewhere on the left hand side, there is the grave of Constance Hill and Ellen G. Hill. It's very difficult to find, not in the best condition, but it is there. And if you ever read this and you can pay your respects, thoroughly recommend it. Beautiful book. I wish Constance Hill had written more because she's got a very pleasing, very easy to read writing style, and the beautiful illustrations are a nice touch as well. Definitely recommend this for any fan of Jane Austen.